Okay, so our class is sponsored for the Hatzlacha of Yosef, David, Yaniv Eliyahu, Bnei Rachel. And it's sponsored for the Ilui Neshama of Nosrat Bat Avraham. Her Neshama should have an Aliyah. The following story is a true story, except I couldn't, or it's supposedly a true story, but I couldn't pronounce the name, so I'm gonna just say a famous pianist. I don't know if it really is a true story, but it is supposedly a true story. The story is told of a doting mother who decided to start giving piano lessons to her son. And her son was like a piano prodigy, was playing really, really well, and at 7 years old, loved the piano, was playing nicely, loved to practice, and of course this mother thought that, you know, he's going to be the next Chopin, and she decided that she wants to take him to a concert in Carnegie Hall. Now everybody told her, listen, he can play like ABC very nicely on the piano, but maybe Carnegie Hall is a bit much for a 7-year-old. And she said, no, I'm raising a prodigy. And she insisted to take her son to Carnegie Hall. And she brings him in, and he's excited, and she's telling him, and he sees that big piano on the stage, and it's just the piano over there, and they're getting ready. And I couldn't pronounce the name of the pianist who was playing, so I decided to just skip it. Anyhow, it was not somebody who I recognized. And she's telling him about this pianist who's going to be playing, and as they sit down in their seats, she turns back and she realizes that her very, very good friend is sitting right behind her, and they start talking, and she's, going on and talking to her friend and telling, you know how you can get caught up when you start speaking to a friend you haven't seen in a while. And since her head is turned backwards like this, her little son Adam sort of wanders off. And she's having this conversation with her friend, and it's going on for quite a while, and all of a sudden the lights start to dim, indicating that the concert is going to begin very soon. And as the lights start to dim, she decides to turn herself around and look over and whisper something to Adam, but she sees he's not there. He has wandered off. And the lights now get dark, and the crowd is hushed. Everybody's anticipating for this great pianist to come onto the stage and starts to play. And she's looking for her son, and she's looking, and it's kind of scary, yeah? She's looking around, and she's trying to at least find an usher to see, has anybody seen this 7-year-old boy? Where on earth has he wandered off to? And all of a sudden, the crowd gasps. And they see this little boy going towards the piano on the middle of the stage. And this little boy, and she sees that's her son, Adam. And she sees this little boy sit down on that piano and start to play Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star in front of all those people. And she says, oh my God, we're going to get kicked out. Oh my God, this is so embarrassing. Oh my goodness, what's going to happen? Meanwhile, the famous pianist comes on stage with this little boy and comes from behind him and whispers in his ears, continue doing what you're doing, and places his fingers on little Adam's fingers and continues this melody of Twinkle, Twinkle. And after one round of Twinkle, Twinkle, this famous pianist starts playing on this side of him and on that side of him, and turns a simple Twinkle, Twinkle into the most incredible masterpiece with little notes on this side and little notes on that side, and the most unbelievable performance of excellence, of proficiency, and of mastery. And of course the crowd claps, and this mother says, you see, I told you he's going to be the next gadol of piano playing. And the truth is that this little Adam, this little 7-year-old who thinks that, he's playing Twinkle, Twinkle on this big, beautiful, baby grand piano, and this simple, simple tune, is really you and I. And you and I come into life, and life is a stage, and each one of us has our own performance. And there are thousands and thousands of neshamas watching how we're going to perform. And we, in our very childlike innocence, get up on stage and think, it's games, I'm going to play Twinkle, Twinkle. But instead of the crowd booing us down and saying, this is not what I paid, I don't even know how much you pay for seats in Carnegie Hall. But instead of the crowd booing us down and saying, this is not what we came for, a simple Twinkle, Twinkle, HaKadosh Baruch Hu b'kvodo v'atzmo comes and he puts his hands on our hands and he embraces us and he tells us, my daughter, continue doing your simple thing that you're doing. And he takes that simple thing which we're doing and he creates from it a huge masterpiece. And then when we get the applause at the end of the day, at the end of our action, so we think, wow, I really did something great. Look how many thousands of people are applauding for me. And the truth is that my greatness came because I continued playing and allowed HaKadosh Baruch Hu to join. And so our lives are about going through experience after experience, noticing that we're on stage, and that every moment is a performance. And every second of my life, thousands of eyes are looking and seeing, what am I going to do? And I have to continue to perform. And I have to continue to play. And so I'd like to kind of look at this story and from the lens of the 7-year-old, from little Adam. So what's he thinking? So here he is, and he sees that there's a big piano in the middle of the stage, and this big piano in the middle of the stage, and what does he know? He knows, I play piano. And so what does he do? He gets up and he goes to play the piano. So from the lens of little Adam, what do we learn? We learn that whenever I recognize an experience that I can do something, over here I can make an impact. Maybe it's not what everybody expected, but there's a piano, I know how to play. There's a person who needs help, I'm going to step in. There's somebody who needs a kind word, I could do it. There's somebody who needs help getting into a parking spot. You know when you're trying to parallel park into a parking spot. So I don't know if anybody else has difficulty doing it, but it's not one of my strong points. And and there's always like people standing and watching you park, and that like makes a difficult task even more difficult because you're like, oh no, they're gonna see me. What? I always want to like roll down the window, and I have done it sometimes. And instead of like them just looking at me like, what's this female driver doing? And say, could you tell me how much more space I have back there? And then all of a sudden, these like very skeptical people turn into such helpful people. How many times are we watching somebody parallel park? And we can just say, come, you have a few more inches. Come, you have a few more inches. We're walking by anyways. There's an opportunity. There's somewhere where we can help. Let's open our eyes. Adam, this little boy saw, I know how to play the piano. Let me go up and play. HaKadosh Baruch Hu will help us. And from the lens of the pianist, here he was, this famous guy. He's getting paid thousands and thousands of dollars for this performance. And a little kid comes and upsteps him and sits in his place. He could have said, get that kid out of here, what's he doing? But no, he says, I see somebody is over there sitting in my seat trying to do what should be done at this concert. I'm not going to kick him out. I'm going to come and I'm going to play with him. And I'm going to make what he's doing even better. And if we understand that HaKadosh Baruch Hu comes and plays with us when we decide to take action in our lives, that it's not just I'm going to be playing a simple twinkle twinkle. I'm not going to just be saying a bracha. I'm not going to be just giving a kind smile to somebody who I know needs one. But God Himself, if I'm genuine in what I'm doing, God Himself is going to come and do it with me. Then all of a sudden, our lives take upon new meaning. It's all in the perspective. How did the boy, how did the pianist, how did they perceive the situation and the opportunity? And in fact, our perspective is really the topic of our conversation today, our perspective. What does it mean to have the proper perspectives in life? We know that our perspectives come based on how our eyes see things. And so we'll talk today, Be'ezrat Hashem, about our eyes. We know that when Moshe Rabbeinu was born, it says that Moshe was born how many months prematurely? 3 months prematurely. Moshe Rabbeinu was born 3 months prematurely, and the Torah tells us that Yocheved, his mother, hid him for 3 months. On a simple level, she hid him for those first 3 months that he was premature, because at that point the Egyptians were not looking for him, and he was able to be hidden without anybody noticing that he was born yet. But deeper than that, explain our rabbis that what does it mean Yocheved hid Moshe for 3 months? Yocheved knew that Moshe Rabbeinu was kulo tov, was all good. And she knew that he needed to be hidden for 3 months. From which 3 months? There are 3 months of the year that have negative power. There are 3 months of the year which are dangerous months. And those were the 3 months from which Yocheved hid Moshe. What are the 3 months of the year? Tammuz, Av, and Tevet. Tammuz, Av, and Tevet. There are 3 months of the year which are under the dominion of Esav. Esav takes power over those 3 months. Tammuz, Av, and Tevet. And when Yocheved hid her son Moshe for 3 months, so on a simple level, she hid him for those actual 3 months. But on a much deeper level, she infused him with tefillot to be able to protect him and his descendants from the 3 months of Tammuz, Av, and Tevet. And so we find ourselves now in the month of Tammuz, in the month where even Moshe Rabbeinu needed to be shaded from. Each month has a different sense which corresponds to it. Whether it's taste, hearing, touch, which organ it corresponds. The sense which corresponds to the month of Tammuz is the sense of sight, of vision. The organ related to Tammuz is our eyes. And not only does each month have an organ or a part of our body, but each month is also characterized by a tribe. A tribe. Which month is the tribe of Tammuz? The tribe of Reuven. The tribe of Reuven. Now tell me, why does that make sense? Because why was Reuven called Reuven? Ra'ah Hashem be'oni. When Leah gave birth to Reuven, very nice. Can I have that? Can I have that? Thank you. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam she'akol nהיה bidbaro. Okay. Ra'ah Hashem be'oni. Hashem saw in my suffering. The tribe which corresponds to Tammuz is Reuven. So let's understand, what does Reuven and what does sight, vision, have to do with Tammuz. The Sefer Yetzirah goes on to say that Tammuz and Av are very connected one to the other. And if Tammuz is sight and the Shevet of Reuven, then Av is hearing, Shmi'ah, and the tribe of Shimon. Now, what does Reuven and Shimon have to do with one another? Well, unfortunately, we see in Sefer Bamidbar, the tribes of Reuven and Shimon seem to get themselves into trouble very early on in our travels, in our going through the desert before we get to Eretz HaKadoshah. The Nasi of Reuven joined forces with Korach. And so we know that a lot of Shevet Reuven was swallowed up by the earth along with Korach. And the Nasi of Shimon sins, we will read about it soon in Parshat Balak, that the Nasi of Reuven sins Kozbi and Zimri, and Pinchas has to come and kill him out, and a terrible plague takes over the tribe of Shimon and kills 24,000 of them. The month of Tammuz was when the Meraglim were sent and were looking out and spying the land of Israel. They were sent towards the end of Sivan, and they spent the entire month of Tammuz with their eyes looking and perceiving. The month of Tammuz was characterized by the vision of the Meraglim. They came back in Av, and on Tisha B'Av they told over what they saw. And the Jewish people used their sense of hearing to hear the negative reports and then cry, which led to the catastrophe of Tisha B'Av, the catastrophe of crying in vain, of now being destined to wander for 40 years. And so we have these two partners, Tammuz and Av, which take us through our vision and through our hearing, which influence our attitudes and how we perceive things which we're going through in our life. What happened? Korach, our rabbis tell us, was brilliant. He was not a foolish man. And so what happened that led him to make such a terrible mistake? And Chazal tell us that Korach saw with his eyes. Korach looked with his eyes into the future and saw that he was going to have a descendant, Shmuel Hanavi. And when he saw Shmuel Hanavi with his eyes, he thought in his head, if Shmuel is going to be as great as Moshe and Aharon, so for sure I'm going to be victorious in my war which I'm going to wage against Moshe. I'm going to come out successful. The next tragedy we know was that Moshe Rabbeinu on Shiva Asar B'Tammuz, not this Sunday, next Sunday, Moshe Rabbeinu broke the luchot. Moshe Rabbeinu broke the tablets and we built Chet HaEgel, we built the golden calf. Why? What happened? 40 days previous we received the Torah from Hashem. We saw HaKadosh Baruch Hu, what caused us to build the Chet HaEgel, to build this calf, and then led to Moshe destroying our tablets. And so Chazal tell us that what did Satan do? Satan made an image. Up in Shamayim, the Jewish people were waiting for Moshe. They miscalculated by 6 hours. The Jewish people were waiting for Moshe. And they didn't see him. And Satan showed an image of Moshe Rabbeinu on his deathbed. And said to them, Moshe's gone. You have no one to lead you. And that's what put the nation into a frenzy and caused them to be scared and then build the Egel. Again, our eyes, what we saw, the tricks that our eyes played on us. In this week's parsha, we're going to read about a terrible plague, again because of complaining. And what's going to save us from this plague? Something called the Nachash HaNechoshet. Hashem is going to tell Moshe Rabbeinu to make a copper snake and to raise it up high. And when the Jewish people will look at this copper snake, they'll be cured from the plague and they'll cease to die. And Chazal asked, does the snake have healing powers? No, say Chazal, Ella, that when the Jewish people look up at the snake, they'll remember to look up into Shamayim, and they'll remember to associate their vision with heaven. And when you associate your vision with Shamayim, with heaven, with Kedusha, then all plagues in our life cease and stop. We're going to read Balak during this month of Tammuz. And in Parshat Balak, we're going to learn about Bil'am. Now, who is Bil'am? Bil'am was the Navi from the side of Tum'ah. If everything in life has an equal and opposite, and so if Moshe was the most kadosh of all Nevi'im, Bil'am too had a spirit of prophecy, but it came from such Tum'ah. Why? Because Bil'am's eyes were so corrupted and so contaminated. And in order for Hashem to give him prophecy, which Hashem had to give him in order to make it fair for the Goyim, Hashem had to blind Bil'am in one eye, so that at least one eye would stay pure and he would be able to receive prophecy. And we know that even with that one eye left that Bil'am had, how did he try to get us? With Ayin Hara. He came and he looked, he tried to give us Ayin Hara. And so we see through the parshiot that we read in the month of Tammuz, and through what happened in history during the month of Tammuz, that the month of Tammuz is caught up and intrinsically connected with eyesight and with vision. Bil'am was blind in one eye. And on the side of Kedusha, we also have somebody, our great-great-great-great-grandfather, who was blind in his eyes. Yitzchak Avinu. Yitzchak Avinu was blind. Why was Yitzchak Avinu blind? Why? Good. Because when he was on the Akedah, when he was being sacrificed, so the Midrash writes that the angels cried and the tears of the angels fell into Yitzchak's eyes, and so therefore he became blind. Another reason why Yitzhak was blind.
Possibly to prevent him from seeing what was ahead in the future from his lineage.
To prevent him from seeing, but what physically caused his blindness? So either it was the tears of the angel or...
Because he saw the Hashem.
Oh, okay, very good, because he looked. So Chazal tell us that when Yitzhak was on the altar, and he was being almost about to be sacrificed, so all of the 7 Riki'im, all of the 7 heavens were opened, and Yitzchak opened his eyes to look at heaven, to look at HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and what happened was, the power of seeing God was so powerful that it blinded his eyesight. Very good. Another reason, physical reason for Yitzchak's blindness. Excellent. The wives of Esav were giving incense to Avodah Zarah, and the smoke of their incense caused blindness to Yitzhak. So what do we have over here? We have Yitzhak Avinu being blind for one of 2 reasons. Either he was blind because of a tremendous, tremendous amount of Kedusha. He saw HaKadosh Baruch Hu, or the angels cried into his eyes, or he was blind because he became blinded by such tumah. He became blinded by the smoke of the Avodah Zarah. And so we see that blindness can come either from something positive, from something which brings me close to godliness, or from something negative, or from staying away, that something evil caused my blindness and caused me not to be able to see. Yitzhak Avinu was famous for instituting which prayer? Mincha. Yitzhak Avinu was famous for instituting Mincha, and the Sefer Wisdom of the Hebrew Months draws an incredible parallel between the tefillah of Mincha to the month of Tammuz. What does the tefillah of Mincha have to do with the month of Tammuz? Tammuz, we discussed this, I think, I'm not sure if we discussed this together in our group, but Tammuz was the name of a Babylonian Avodah Zarah. Tammuz was the name of a sun god, of an Avodah Zarah. Now, we began this month of Tammuz on Wednesday and Thursday with a major, major heat wave which took us. And we know that everything that happens in nature, everything which happens in this world on a natural level is really giving us some kind of a spiritual truth, something spiritual which is going up in heaven. And so what's the heat wave that Tammuz began with? Why did we have a heat wave on the first 2 days of Rosh Chodesh of Tammuz? And so I think the answer is because HaKadosh Baruch Hu was telling us, my beautiful daughters, be aware that during the month of Tammuz, the spiritual heat goes up just a notch. What does it mean that the spiritual heat is taken up a notch? The idol named Tammuz, the Avodah Zarah named Tammuz, if you look it up in Yechezkel, Hashem tells the prophet Yechezkel, oh yeah, Yechezkel, you want to see what the Jewish people are doing? You want to see what they're doing so that you know why I have to destroy them? And Hashem takes Yechezkel through his prophecy, place by place, and he shows him in the deepest caves all of the different terrible things that the Jewish people are doing in secrecy and sacrificing to Avodah Zarah. And he takes them deep into a cave, and he takes Yechezkel in, and what does Yechezkel see? Yechezkel sees an idol, a statue, which is hollowed out from the inside, and he sees hundreds of Jewish women looking at this statue, crying with this statue, and sacrificing to this statue. And explains them at Sudat David, what was this statue of Tammuz? So apparently, what they did was, it was a hollow idol, and the Jewish women would fill this idol up with different things, and then light it on fire. And the eyes of this idol were hollow, were opened up, and so when the fire would burn, ashes would drip down from the eyes of this Avodah Zarah, and the women would say, wow, he's crying for us to sacrifice to him. He's crying for us to sacrifice to him. And they would proceed to sacrifice and to worship this Avodah Zarah. The Avodah Zarah of the month of Tammuz The avodah zarah of this sun god is the avodah zarah of creating false tears, of creating tears which are not serving a purpose of kedusha, which are not real tears, which are being spurned from tum'ah, that it's crying for useless reasons. And here came this sun god, which the Jewish women were particularly attached to, because a woman we know has a tendency to be able to cry for small things, to be able to cry a little bit more easy. The sun connotes judgment, din. The sun is always used as a mashal for din. When Mashiach comes, the Torah tells us that the sun is going to be taken, the Gemara tells us, that the sun is going to be taken out of its protective shell and it's going to shine down on the earth. And the tzaddikim are going to be healed by the sun's rays, and the Rishaim are going to be burned by the sun's rays. By the way, I've heard that some people say, what does it mean being taken out of its protective shell? That that's what it's an allusion to the ozone layer, which is slowly diminishing and being taken away. And that's Yehi Ratzon, we should see Mashiach very, very soon. Tiskila mitzvot, thank you. That we should see Mashiach very, very soon. But when this layer, when this protective shell is peeled away, so the sun's rays are going to come down in a spirit of judgment. And those who are tzaddikim will be healed by the rays of the sun. And those who are rasha'im, lo aleinu has v'shalom, are going to be burned by those sun's rays. And so therefore the month of Tammuz is a month of din. The month where the sun's rays begin to get stronger is a month which is categorized by din. And we know that the prayer of mincha is a tefillah which is said at the time of din. The code of law warns us, la'olam yizaher, a person should always be careful about the tefillah of mincha, because that was the tefillah which Eliyahu Hanavi was answered at Har HaKarmel. And the Zohar tells us that the time of mincha is a time of din. How come? Because we know that the time of mincha is when the sun begins to set. When the sun begins to set, what color does the sun become? Red. Red, which is the sign of din, as opposed to white, which is the sign of mercy. The redness of the sun, again, is an allusion to the din which is happening in Shamayim. A sunset, interestingly enough, is absolutely beautiful. The redness of the sun is beautiful because din is a beautiful thing. It's just hard for us to swallow if we're not ready for it. And so comes the tefillah of mincha, comes Yitzchak Avinu, and we daven that tefillah in order to save ourselves from the din of the sun. Who was answered at tefillat mincha? Eliyahu Hanavi. What happened with Eliyahu Hanavi? And so Eliyahu Hanavi lived in a time of history where the Jewish people were very, very involved with a certain avodah zarah called avodat haBaal. They were worshipping the Baal, and they were bringing avodah zarah and sacrifices to it. And Eliyahu Hanavi was screaming, "This Navi, this Baal is worthless, it's useless, it's not going to help you." And HaKadosh Baruch Hu allowed Eliyahu Hanavi to make a mizbeach, to make a bama on Har HaKarmel, not in the Beis HaMikdash, because it was a hora'at shah, it was a temporary thing. And Eliyahu Hanavi said, we're going to make a contest between God and the Baal. And Eliyahu Hanavi said, if your Baal, if your God answers you, so then the Baal is right. And if he doesn't answer you and God answers my korban and brings the fire down, then my God is right. And Eliyahu Hanavi makes a contest. And the Nevi'im of the Baal, the false Nevi'im, are standing there. The way Nevuah worked was there was always one, the way false Nevuah worked was there was always one or two people who were behind the false Nevuah, and they would make all of the tricks happen, and that would trick all of the rest of the Jewish people, and then they would get a lot of money from the rest of the Jewish people. And so there was a guy sitting underneath the Mizbeach of the Baal, and he is supposed to light the fire so that it looks like the Baal was being consumed by the Avodah Zarah. But of course, since this test was set up by God, this fire wouldn't light. And so these false prophets were telling them, cry out to the gods. And so from the morning until the afternoon, Eliyahu Navi said, don't worry, I'll wait. Maybe your God is sleeping now. Maybe your God is, taking a rest. Maybe he's doing something. I'll wait. Keep calling out to your Baal. And so from morning until afternoon, these people are calling out to the false prophet, to their false God, to the Avodah Zarah, and nothing happens. And then comes Mincha time. And it's the end of the day. And the sun is about to set. And Eliyahu Hanavi says, well, if the true God is HaKadosh Baruch Hu, come and accept this Korban. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu accepts the Korban of Eliyahu Hanavi. HaKadosh Baruch Hu accepts the Korban of the Jewish people. And God emerges victorious, so to speak, in this contest between the Baal and God. Lahavdil. And so Mincha time is a time where Hashem brings down His judgment and shows us clarity. It's a time where there was confusion in the world, but just like the sun, when the sun comes out, confusion falls to the wayside because the sun's rays show us light. So too, Mincha time is a time where there could be so much confusion, but if you take proper advantage of it, you can achieve clarity. And so too, my friends, is the month of Tammuz. The month of Tammuz and Av, the summer months where there's hefkerus, where people are just, certain things fall to the wayside. When there's school, there's seder. When there's work, there's order. Somehow when the summer comes, everybody gets a little bit more comfortable. It's the summertime. Later minyanim start. The days are longer. Certain things become compromised. Hashem says the month of Tammuz, there's a tremendous vulnerability to confusion. But if we take the month of Tammuz and we use it properly, we will have clarity. Now, Eliyahu Hanavi was a reincarnation of somebody. Who? Pinchas. Pinchas, we know, was Eliyahu Hanavi. Now, Pinchas saw what Cosby and Zimri were doing from the Nasi of the tribe of Shimon. He used his vision to see, and what did he do? He came and he stopped the plague. He killed Cosby and Zimri in the act. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave him the eternal brit, a covenant of shalom, briti shalom. Eliyahu Hanavi is also given briti shalom, which is why we know Eliyahu Hanavi comes to every single brit milah. Listen carefully. The gematria of Eliyahu plus the gematria of Pinchas is 206. 206 is the gematria of ayin plus ayin. I and I. Ayin. Ayin Yud Nun, Ayin Yud Nun. Pinchas and Eliyahu correspond to our two eyes, correspond to the month of Tammuz, to the power of our eyes, that our vision can achieve clarity, or our eyes, Chalila v'chas, can be our biggest detriment. We say, Ki ayin be'ayin yira'eh. Because Hashem is going to show us eye with an eye, He's going to show us the return of the Jewish people to Tzion. But Yirmiyahu Hanavi in Eicha also cries, Eini, Eini, Yardu Mayim. My eyes have shed so many tears. Yirmiyahu in Eicha. Because our eyes can either be eyes which are going to see B'shuveinu leTzion, our return to Tzion, or our eyes, Chas v'Shalom, our eyes which are going to be crying tears over destruction of the temple. How do we use our eyes during this month of Tammuz? In addition to every month having an organ, which it corresponds to, a tribe, which it corresponds to, a letter, which it corresponds to, every month also has one of the names of Hashem, one of the permutations of God's four-letter name, which it corresponds to. And so we know HaKadosh Baruch Hu's four-letter name is Yud and Hey, Vav and Hey, and those four letters can be scrambled up in 12 different ways. I was trying to think of what the word of it is. Is it permutations? 12 permutations? Is that what it is? Like 4 to the third exponent? That's not what... I was trying to figure out how you get from 4 to 12. There's a certain mathematical way to do it. I couldn't remember. Anyways. The permutation of Hashem's name for the month of Tammuz is the opposite direction of God's name. And so if God's name is Yud and then Hey and then Vav and then Hey, the name of Tammuz is spelled backwards. Hey and then Vav, Hey and then Yud. And it comes from which pasuk? It comes from a pasuk which Haman HaRasha says. Haman HaRasha has just been given all of everything good in the world. And he has everything at his fingertips, at his disposal. And he comes home and he sees Mordechai doesn't bow down to him. And he comes home to his wife and he says, I have everything. V'chol zeh eineno shaveh li. Says the Bnei Yisachar, v'chol zeh hey eineno vav shaveh hey li yud. Sofei tevot. The last letter of those words, all of this is meaningless to me. V'chol zeh eineno shaveh li. I have everything, but it's worth nothing. The last letter of those words spell out Hashem's name, which categorizes this month. How come? Who was Haman? Haman was the prototypical complainer. I promised you 2 weeks ago. I don't know if you remember. We had a class on complaining. We said complain just how to do it right, and we did not have time to finish. And today was supposed to be a continuation of that class. And I only remembered halfway through preparing today's class that I owe you the rest of that class. And then I said it's major siyata d'shmaya because the end of that class is exactly the class which we're talking about today. Haman was the complainer. We learned 2 weeks ago that complaining, is this off? Can you hear me? We learned that where does, I'll speak louder, it's not a problem. No, I think this tapes. This part is just for us. Yeah, this part is going to tape for Torah Anytime. Okay. We learned that what made us into the Jewish people, 2 words, Na'aseh v'nishma. When we said the words Na'aseh v'nishma, Hashem said, Mi gila raz ze le'ohavai lebanai. Who revealed this secret, this raz, to my children? And we learned that the secret of being a Jew is the secret of Na'aseh v'nishma. Na'aseh v'nishma, we will do and we will listen, can be said in one of 2 ways. Na'aseh v'nishma, whatever you say, Hashem, I'll do. Or Na'aseh v'nishma can be, okay, what's my checklist for today? Daven, gave tzedakah, made the phone call, I did. It can be, Na'aseh v'nishma, I'll do it. All right, God, you want me to do it? I'll do it. And we learned how to say that our life should not be a checklist of chores. I want to go through life as a Na'aseh v'nishma. The raz, the secret, if you spell it backwards, can be one of 2 words. Can be zar, foreign, or zer, a crown. And we learned that there were 3 things in the Beis HaMikdash which had a zer, a golden crown. What were the 3 things? Shulchan, Mizbeach, Aron. Because there are 3 things in our bayit, in our holy work, that can be, that can have a zer, can have a gold crown around them, or can be zar, or can be like foreign worship. Shulchan, which is how we eat at the table, the eating in our home. The Aron, which was Kodesh HaKadoshim, the husband and wife relationship, the spousal relationship. And, the Mizbeach, which is family life. The Mizbeach, which is family life. The Shulchan, which is Parnasa. And the Aron, which is the relationship between husband and wife. And these 3 things find themselves in our Beit HaBechira. The Torah calls our Beit HaMikdash Beit HaBechira, because how we build our homes is our choice. Our choices build up our homes. Am I going to make my life Na'aseh v'nishma, or is my life going to be, Na'aseh nishma? Is my life going to be a zer, a golden crown, or zar, foreign worship? And we learned that it all has to do with complaining, how I'm going to approach my life. We learned that something I complain about, I'll never be able to fully enjoy. If I've complained a lot about being single, then the marriage will not be as great. If I complained a lot about a certain child, then even when that child develops, I will not be able to derive full pleasure from it. And we learned that from the lesson of when the Jewish people complained for meat, and then the meat got stuck in their teeth and they never fully enjoyed it. And so complaining can be a very, very scary thing. And we left off by asking, so what is the root of complaining? Where does it emanate from? If we want to be able to fix it, if we want to not be like Haman, who has everything and still complains, if we want to be able to have clarity in a situation, we have to know. So then that desire to complain, that ichinus, even though I know I have everything, how many times a day do we act like Haman? We know we have everything, but still we're upset. Where is the root? And that was the question that I left you with. Is there? Oh, Benji, he's outside with them. There, as long as there's no cars over there. The question was that I left you, and I gave 2 weeks for you to think. What's the source? What's the root of complaining? Anybody come up with an answer? Huh? Okay, you and your attitude, excellent. What caused the Jewish people to complain? Ladies, the Jewish people were in the desert. 2 weeks ago, we were still in Parshat Ba'alotcha. They were in the desert. They had everything. They had Hashem giving them their food. They had everything they needed. They were about to walk into Eretz Yisrael without having to lift a finger. They were going to have the end of days. It was going to be perfect. Why did they complain? Listen carefully. Listen carefully. The Jewish people were in the desert. By definition, when you're in the desert, you do not have a bayit. You do not have a home. And a person who does not have a home can have everything in the world. And then to appreciate it becomes very, very difficult. What does it mean to be in the desert, to be without a home? We say in Tehillim, Beit Yisrael barchu et Hashem. Beit Aharon barchu et Hashem. Beit HaLevi barchu et Hashem. Yir'ei Adonai barchu et Hashem. All three of the first have a bayit. Yir'ei Hashem don't have a bayit. Those who fear God. Why? Because somebody without a bayit, somebody who is wandering through her life without a home, needs to have a tremendous amount of Yirat Shamayim in order to be able to bless God. Let me explain. What does it mean not to have a bayit, not to have a home? A Jewish woman needs to have a home to feel secure. A home means that she needs not necessarily a physical place, that she needs to have her house and her kitchen. She needs to have what to rely on. She needs to have someone to rely on. She needs to have support coming from inside. She needs to feel like she has a solid place from where she can then go out in the world. A woman's root is her home. And someone who does not have a home can have everything in the world, and then it becomes very difficult to appreciate it. And so not having a home, I think, is the tzara, is the pain of our generation. Whether it's with shidduchim, whether it's with young men and women, older men and women, who so desperately want to have a home of their own already and they don't. And the difficulty of knowing, I have so many good things and life could be so much worse, but I'm so sad because I want a home. Or it's the pain of the women who have homes but have terrible, terrible conflict and no harmony in their home, and their home is not a place of protection. Or the children who don't have pleasure at home, and how the family structure and the home has become such a dysfunctional and difficult place to be. And the reason is because our homes have become the street. It used to be that we had to go out to the street to be on the street. And now we know that a person is alone in their house and the street comes in. And we bring the street into our home. And there's nowhere that we lock the doors and nothing comes in. And so our very homes have been violated. And that's what leads us to the unhappiest of generations. That's what leads us to a generation that has so much, but is so unhappy. Because we don't have a home. And if we want to be able to solve the root of complaining, we have to be able to build for ourselves a home within the circumstances which HaKadosh Baruch Hu has given us. We have to create a home, a safe haven for ourselves to escape to be in, to operate out of. I don't think it's coincidental that today in Eretz Yisrael in the morning, 15 families out of 15 or 16 out of the 33 families were evacuated from their homes in Ulpana. The community in Beit El, which is in Yehuda and Shomron, they had built 5 apartment buildings with 33 families, and they were living there for years. It was really, these were people who grew up in Beit El, and then they grew up and got married, and they wanted to live around their parents. And so on the land right outside of the main city of Beit El, they built 5 buildings, and they had 33 young families with kids and parks living over there. And an Arab came and said, I have rights to this land where they built their 5 buildings. And the Israeli government said, yeah, he's right. And they're kicking the residents of Ulpana out of their homes and destroying that area. The pain of them being taken out of their homes to caravans. I read that the Israeli government promises that by the weekend they'll have electricity and running water inside. I was like, in their caravans. And can you imagine moving to a place that doesn't have running water inside of it? Who would do that? Who would do that? And here we have families with their young children being moved into caravans, saying goodbye to the homes which they built with their own hands. One of the residents said, okay, fine, so maybe the land really belongs to this Arab, but if an Arab came with claims of a land in Tel Aviv, would you destroy the homes over there? Compensate this Arab. Why are you kicking us out of our homes? But my dear friends, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, I think, is trying to wake us up. Trying to wake us up to His tsa'ar, to His pain of not having a home. Why is it that there are so many people suffering without a home? Because HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, this is my pain. When are you, my dear children, going to realize that I don't have a home? And so I think that the way we can solve our tendency to complain is if we take the advice of David HaMelech, who tells us, Betzel shakai yitlonan. Complaining is something which will happen. How should I complain? Betzel shakai, in the shadow of Hashem. Which means that when I complain, I have to direct that complaint to the proper address. Yes, maybe it's this person who's bothering me. Maybe it's this situation which is hurting me. But nothing has power besides for God. If I'm in this situation, it's being sent to me by Hashem. And so in every place where I'm feeling squished, in every place where I'm feeling squeezed, instead of just concentrating on how terrible all the people around me are treating me, to think, wow, this is Hashem's tsa'ar. This is God's pain. And to complain to Hashem. To complain and say, Hashem, this is not fair for us. This is not comfortable for us. I don't have a safe haven. You don't have a safe haven. I have nowhere where I can feel calm and where I can feel I have a place to go to escape from the world. You don't have a place to go, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. When the Jewish people in Beit El are being evacuated and evicted from their homes, to understand that this hitnatkut, that this evacuation is HaKadosh Baruch Hu trying to arouse our emotions, to arouse us to say, my children, cry for my hitnatkut. Cry for my being evacuated from my home. I once heard a rabbi talking about different segulas, and he said, you know, there are many, many great segulas, and when we hear the word segula, we all love to run after segulas. And he said comically, I wonder if anybody has heard about the segula of mincha. The segula of mincha. And truth be told, Sephardi women do not have the chiyuv to daven mincha. But I think maybe we can take upon ourselves this segula for the month of Tammuz. Tammuz, which is the month of din, which is the month of heat. Mincha, which is the tefillah of din. To take for ourselves the segula of mincha. The segula of stopping in the middle of the day and saying, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, we're in it together. I direct my eyes towards you. I will protect my eyes from the sights which threaten us during the summer months. I will protect my thoughts from what occurs from what I see during the month of Tammuz and through this din. And maybe take upon ourselves, I'm not even saying every day, but once in a while during this month, the segula of mincha, and to think about the judgment, to think about how we can see din as a sunset, the red judgment as something which is beautiful in our lives. So that when we see those situations which beg us to complain, which beg us to kvetch about our lives, to look at those and say, this is a beautiful sunset. I just have to know how to adjust my eyes to see them. The Bnei Yissaschar quotes a Gemara which says that when a person is looking for a kala, for a bride, if she has beautiful eyes, he need not look any further. That's enough. Check if she has beautiful eyes, he need not look any further. I don't think the Gemara was saying if she has, big green eyes and long black lashes. Beautiful eyes means the way to perceive life. And Yehi Ratzon, if HaKadosh Baruch Hu can come down and look at mine and your eyes this month and see that we have beautiful eyes, that he need not look any farther. And that we should come into, in a week and a half, the time of Bein HaMetzarim, that we should be able, instead of it being a constricted time, to expand it with proper vision, with proper perspective, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu should answer our tefillot and put his hands on our hands and play the masterpiece of our life along with us.